Good morning and welcome to Sunup. I'm Dave Deacon, and a lot of producers are thinking about the upcoming crops. And Brian, producers need to be thinking about soil fertility.
Absolutely, and right now nitrogen is a key aspect of which everybody's considering. Anhydrous prices have been low recently, and we had a run on purchasing and applying anhydrous before this rain came through. Great price to get out there, you know, low prices we haven't seen in a long time. So producers were taking advantage of those low prices and put it on specifically for the graze out and dual purpose wheat systems. Now, I recommended that. I mean, it's a great price to get it on, get that nitrogen in the system for that grazing, make sure you get enough for the gain. But one thing we have to keep in mind about this early nitrogen that's going on, that it's a twofold situation. You know, we're putting it on to create good forage. With good forage means significant nitrogen uptake. To get good forage in the state of Oklahoma, it takes one thing primarily, and that's rainfall. The more rain we have, the more forage we produce, and also the more likelihood we lose nitrogen.
Right.
And so we're in a system that if everything holds out, we've got great soil moisture now, we're looking at more rain in the future. So those that put anhydrous on already are going to soon have good fall pasture production, are likely going to be short in the spring when it comes to either finishing out that wheat crop for grazing or going to a grain. So we're going to have to keep in mind and look at it in the manner of at least mass balance. You know, how much nitrogen did you put on? How much nitrogen did you take off? And we can look at it that for every 100 pounds of gain, there's at least 20 pounds of nitrogen in the forage that took to take that gain. So, you know, on a conservative side, if a pasture puts on 200 pounds of gain per acre, that's what we're pulling off, we need to assume at least 60 pounds have been taken up, removed, or lost from the system. And so account for that going into the spring when it's top dress time and going in for your grain, and know that you've had this much taken out, we need this much more on.
So we've been fortunate this year, in a couple of years past, to get that rainfall. Walk us through what moisture does to soil fertility.
So what moisture is doing to soil fertility, primarily the nitrogen and the mobile nutrients, which would be sulfur, chloride, boron. But let's just talk about nitrogen. When producers are applying anhydrous ammonia, it goes into the soil as NH3 and quickly gets to NH4 ammonium. So it's applied as ammonia as a gas, then goes to ammonium as a solid. Our system in Oklahoma is pretty rapid, that as long as there is moisture and warm temperatures, that ammonium is turned to nitrate. And we have some recent work in corn that shows in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks, we convert almost all of our ammonium to nitrate if the temperatures are in the 70s and we have soil moisture. Well, it's August in Oklahoma and it's raining, so our temperatures are well above 70 and we have moisture. As we convert from ammonium to nitrate, we go from a nutrient that is held on the soil to nitrate, which is mobile in moisture. So as our soil profile fills up, as it saturates up with the rainfall, we have that soil held in, the moisture held in the soil, and the nitrate is in with the moisture. Wherever that water goes in the soil, the nitrate will go with it. So if we have a well-drained deep soil, the nitrate will go down. If we're on some of our shallower soils that may have a plow pan or a restrictive layer on a slope, that soil moisture will actually drain down slope and it'll carry the nitrate with it. And so that's why sometimes we'll see at the bottom of a hill slope, it'll be a greener wheat or greener forage, while the side slope is a little bit better looking. It's because we've lost all of that nutrients down. Sulfur will travel the same way, and so will chloride. So in our high yielding wheat crops, especially those wheat crops that may be following a good corn or soybean crop, we need to look at maybe sulfur coming in, especially in the springtime, on the deep, well-drained sandy soils.
Now, at the beginning of a wheat crop, where we are right now, it's a good time for producers to pencil in applications throughout the year. Kind of walk us through a situation where a producer is going to do all the applications and ones that they may not want to, you know, do the full investment.
Do full investment. So there's two aspects, and I want to talk first about the graze, or let's do grain only first.
Okay.
And that's a system that there's time to plan still in advance. The producers I'm working with more recently with grain only that are trying to produce production and efficiencies are going into a 3-pass system. And so that 3-pass system is when the wheat's planted, they're putting a starter in an 18460 DAP or a MAP 11520 dry fertilizer in with the seed that gives a little nitrogen and phosphorus for the get up and go. And so as you get that in the ground, you have the phosphorus, you have the nitrogen ready to go. Just a little bit of nitrogen. They have the enriched strips out, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. And in the fall or winter, the strips show up and they make their first application. And as you go into this 3-pass system, that winter application is becoming more of a consistent. And we're going out with about 20 gallons of UAN, which is about 60 pounds of nitrogen, or 100 pounds of urea, plus or minus. We're wanting that about 50 to 70 pounds of nitrogen going in on that crop in that winter after that strip has first responded. Now that on a lot of this ground, we're talking a 50 to an 80 bushel wheat crop, which would typically demand somewhere 80 to 150 pounds of nitrogen. So we're not to that point yet. So that allows producers to put some inputs in the winter, not have all their eggs in the basket yet, but be more efficient than applying right now.
Right.
And then we wait till the spring. And then come February, March, we take another look at the stand. Do we have the tillers? Do we have the soil moisture to profile? How is everything looking? How's the market looking? And then we do a third application, and we can use the enriched strip and sensor then too. What we're seeing with this 3-pass system where we have a starter, something in the winter, and then top off in the spring, depending upon environment, we're seeing efficiencies really increase. We're seeing producers getting to 1.2 to 1.4 pounds of N per bushel produced. And because they're delaying nitrogen application, our protein is better. The more we can put off putting nitrogen on closer to hollow stem, that stem elongation in February, March, the better our end quality is, because that nitrogen's still there when the crop needs it when it's filling grain. On the dual purpose side, we want to look at it similar scenario, but we want to put just enough on or a little bit extra to get the forage you plan to have. And so, put on the nitrogen. You know how much gain you expect to get on this soil. You put the nitrogen on for the gain, for the forage production. You still have your enriched strips out in the field to watch. And then as soon as the cattle comes off in that hollow stem time frame, then you're making that application to fill it out to the grain side. And so that's where you then apply your grain yield nitrogen needs. Again, we can use the enriched strip and the green seeker sensor to get us to that right rate.
Well, that covers the end, but then there's also some other elements that producers are going to be concerned with.
And right now, one of the biggest priorities I'd have with the producers, the nitrogen, the secondary, it's the pH and phosphorus.
Right.
So we can't do anything about pH right now. Lime takes, half a year to a year to react. So at this point in time, we aren't liming, but we need to address acidity where we did not handle it with lime.
Right.
In that case, it's phosphorus. Banding the phosphorus fertilizer with the seed, puts it in there, it ties up the aluminum, which is hurting the plant, and allows that plant to grow. And at the same time we put the phosphorus in furrow, we can also take care of our phosphorus needs as far as fertility goes. So phosphorus based upon the soil test, and then the additional 30 pounds of P2O5 per acre if you have soil acidity in the field.
Now, we've talked about the enriched strip several times. It's as easy as the setup we have back here.
Yeah, we have a lot of producers that may use anhydrous applicators, spinner spreaders, big spinner spreaders, liquid rigs. Some will use an ATV, but I'm putting more of these into the county offices now. And this is all that is really needed is a push spreader and some urea. And we go out in the field, and I would like to see, 100 foot of pass. And so I always recommend, even if it's grazed, find a way to mark where that starts. So if it's a flag outside the fence or hot wire, or use a fence post as your starting point, and we just mark it with a single flag. I want to see, they open it up, and I want to see the application go. I'm wide open on this.
Yeah.
I want to see the application go, I'd like to see 100 feet.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with anything we can get on this.
Yeah.
And then always remember when you shut it off to come in on the backside, mark your point. Like I said, if you got cattle, flags don't work.
Right.
Coyotes are known to pull flags. So a lot of people, I just recommend use a fence post in that tree, or another fence post or telephone post in the horizon. So your 2 points, write it down on a note card.
Right.
keep an eye on this. We don't have to have a sensor to make a nitrogen rate.
Right.
If it shows up, you know there is a need for more nitrogen. We can start making recommendations. Don't worry, our newest research is showing that if the strip shows up, you have some time to get on.
Right.
Plan it with the weather. Make sure your application's suited where you can get it on in front of a rainfall if possible.
Right.
And this is how Oklahoma wheat producers are maximizing nitrogen use efficiency, maximizing yield, and getting protein levels up above 12%.
So a minimal investment in a yard spreader could impact your crop.
$30 or $40 on the spreader, $10, $15 on a couple bags of urea, and we're talking for the winter wheat crop, $10 per acre per year.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Brian. And for more information on soil fertility, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.